Hello, everybody. So I was asked to speak at your conference. So I looked at the brief, read around, see what you're all talking about, and here we go. This was it: ad revenue generation, a user-driven world, high-quality user experiences, high yields, positive UX. I've worked in creative agencies and media agencies for the best part of 30 years, and I was really quite depressed because I understood what it all meant. We love jargon, don't we? We all love a bit of jargon. And I'm just urging you to think about what real people think we're talking about. When you talk to most people outside of what we do for a living, what a user is, they'll think you're talking about someone who's on drugs. If you refer to someone as a target, they'll think you're possibly in the market for a hitman. Engagement, that's what we do when we get married, usually, hopefully, involving a large diamond. And I'll let you imagine your own context if one of your loved ones said to you, "So how was your UX?" The language of functionality has overtaken the art of humanity, I would argue, and I often wonder whether we're deliberately creating this confusion. And I blame this word. We've got to get over the digital. I looked on Wikipedia about the digital revolution, and apparently it started 40 years ago, so it's about time we kind of just all got over it. It's not a prefix, it's not a thing. It's just the world. It's simply the world around us. It's not a new paradigm. The old rules still apply. And I think what we've got to do is remember what we actually do. And in advertising, in media, and with you guys, it's about connecting ideas, connecting brands to people in a way that they appreciate and hopefully reciprocate. So, what is it that we really do? Or moreover, what don't we want to do? What do you actually mean when we talk about positive UX? And I think basically distilling it all down is the way forward for the industry is just to do less crap. And it was never more critical. I sat in the discussion this morning about ad blocking, so you don't need me to repeat the numbers. People are downloading blockers in much bigger numbers. And the vast majority of doing it is because they hate the ads. We're being interruptive, we're being intrusive, they've got concerns over security, what are we doing with their data, we're stalking around the internet. It's just quite a sad indictment of what advertising does for a living, which seems to be annoy people. And then we also heard this morning about Google and Apple developing their own ad blockers, and they're going to protect, in their words, the Chrome and Safari users from intrusive ads. And it could help, yeah, it's going to help clear out some of the crap, but it does raise massive questions about the tech industry's growing power, because eventually the world around us is all going to be Google approved and filtered with respect to the man from Google. Sorry, I don't mean to pick on you any more than you were picked on this morning. So actually, I don't want to talk about positive UX. I want to talk about empathy. And although I said digital wasn't a prefix, I am going to call it digital empathy, because digital is inherently systematic. We live in a world that's machine learning, algorithms, programmatic. We're getting increasingly systematic in the way that we operate. But I think we just need to pause and think about empathy. And empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of other people. At the end of the day, a great advertising experience is about feeling the love. And I think there's three things for us to consider, for all to consider, in digital empathy. So the first one is be human. You've got to ask yourself, do you really want to go on a date with a user, let alone build a long-term, meaningful, deep relationship? And to paraphrase the great David Ogilvy, the user is not a moron. He or she is your wife. We've got to remember that we're not in it for the short term, for the clickbaiting. We're in it for the long term. We're in it for the romance. So there's some real basic rules in being human. We've got to be entertaining, we've got to be useful, we've got to be informative, and if we're not going to get a second date. The next thing I think in empathy is to show some respect. We're all talking about AI all the time, it's our current obsession, but I very rarely hear people talk about EI, emotional intelligence, the ability to recognise the emotions of others. And I think we've got to remember the emotional context of what we're doing all the time, which is we're interrupting people. So before we interrupt them, what are they doing? Why are they doing it? What's going on in their lives that we've got to be respectful about? Deepak Chopra, I have to rehearse how I said that, a great quote I found, advised us to treat every moment as a gift. That's why they call it the present, because ultimately that's what we're doing. People are giving us the gift of their time, and if we don't respect that, we're not going to get that gift again. And finally, I think what we've got to do is remember to talk to some real people. I saw some fantastic research by Trinity Mirror recently, which gave us evidence of the London bubble. And it basically said that people outside of London are 25% more likely to agree with the fact that brands don't recognise them, they don't get them. And that number went up to 48% when you spoke to 35 to 44-year-olds, arguably the people with the money, the spending power. I think we've got to be really careful that we think all the answers lie in the data. If data's making us more relevant, more timely, more intimate, why are more people blocking us out? Big data is not always the answer. It's the noise, but it's not usually the conversation. If digital is giving us conversation, it's giving us connection, it's giving us a way to interact with the wider world, then why are digital platforms and publishers being accused of creating echo chambers? That doesn't feel very conversational. And so what I finally want to do is just urge you to remember that most people do things because of other people. They do things because of word of mouth, and digital has allowed us to scale that through influencers, and influencers are our new community leaders. So people are still the great motivator of persuasion. So in summary, let's drop the impersonal jargon, let's stop talking about users, let's talk about real people. Let's stop putting the prefix digital in front of everything, because it's used as like a barrier, so you can't possibly understand because it's digital. Remember what we actually do for a living and hopefully what we don't do, which is make crap. And remember who we do that for. We've got to be human, we've got to show some respect, we've got to talk to some real people. And I think empathy is the way forward for our industry, not positive UX. Thank you.
Don't go yet, actually. Sorry, the question comes up. We began that point there talking about, okay, we've got demands for viewability, we've got to be able to do X, Y, Z. But you're from a part of the agency that cares less about viewability, right, and cares more about what you think are the fundamentals. Do you think there's the chance to have that kind of discussion with an agency or with the buyers and the buy side to say, okay, yes, we're doing this work on viewability, but actually, here are the things that we're researching that we think are fundamentals. What do you think?
Well, I don't think we do care less about viewability because we care about getting people's attention. And if the campaigns that we make don't get attention, we're not going to get any more of our clients' money. Yeah. So attention is really key. I mean, I think viewability is potentially, the debate's all about, what percentage in view for how many seconds. It's like saying, could I, in the old days, could I see the whole of the telly when I was in the kitchen? Did we get attention? Did we engage people? Do they like us anymore for seeing what we do? Those are the basics of what we do. And I think the more we talk about performance metrics and viewability, the more we lose the point of what we're in the business to do.
But is that, so we're not going to try and take too many questions. Is that not a a function of the search for metrics to explain effectiveness and all that kind of stuff, and the industry viewpoint that says I must have effectiveness, I must have ROI, etc., etc.
Yeah. And what digital's done is make that possible. And what's happened for most, and when you talk to most of your clients, there's been a massive rush towards digital channels because you can get those effectiveness measurements and you can get those metrics. So everyone says, oh, brilliant, I can prove that what I'm doing is really good, which has always been the big challenge in advertising. But what we've also seen is this rush to short-termism, and there's loads of research being published. Les Bonet and Peter Field do a lot of work about effectiveness of advertising, and what they're observing is this rush to short-termism is a short-term response, and brands and depth of emotion are the things that actually put long-term profit into business. And we've got to wrestle with that all the time because it's the lure of short-term metrics is very attractive, but not necessarily very healthy.
Okay, lovely. I think we're going to try and head into that direction.